In this exercise file, I have several walls created, and each one is a different basic wall type. When you select a wall, you can see the type in the type selector, and you can expand the type selector and change the wall type. And you can also click Edit Type to open the Type Properties dialog. And here you can see all of the type parameters that define the wall type. To create a new wall type, you need to duplicate an existing wall type. So for this example, we'll create a brick on metal stud wall type so we can duplicate the brick on CMU type. So with that type selected, I'll click Duplicate, and then for the name, I'll enter brick on exterior dash brick on metal stud, and then click OK. And now I can adjust any of these type parameters to define the new wall type. We'll start here with the structure, and you can click Edit next to Structure to open the Edit Assembly dialog. And this is where you can define all of the layers that make up the wall type. In this table here, you can see the various layers. And as you start at the top, this is the exterior side. You can see that indicated here above the table. And then at the bottom, that's the interior side. So as you move down the list, you're moving from the exterior to the interior side. We'll start by adjusting the structure of the wall. And the structure is defined within the core boundary layers. And so you can see that there are two core boundary layers, and those cannot be modified. And inside of that is the structure of the wall. To get a better view of that, we can click Preview at the bottom of the dialog, and that'll open a preview window. And as I zoom in, you can see two green lines, and those green lines represent the core boundary layers. And so within that is our structure right here. So right now we duplicated the CMU type, and so that's why concrete masonry units is listed here. But we can click in the material field and then click the More button to open the material browser. And we can browse through the entire list here, or we can begin typing in the search field to filter the list. So as I type metal stud, you can see the list is filtered, and now I see the metal stud layer material. So I'll select that and then click OK, and now it updates here in my layer, my structure layer. I'll also change the thickness to 6 inches by typing 0 space 6 and pressing enter. And now you can see in the preview here that gets a little bit smaller. Since this is the structure layer, we'll leave this selected to be the structural material, and then we do not want it to be a variable thickness, so we'll leave variable deselected. So now we have our structure layer defined, and now we can continue on really however we want. So I'll start here on the exterior side and we'll work our way down. Now, one thing that we kind of went through pretty quickly, but our function there, as I expand that drop down, you can see there are multiple options for the function. And you can also see a number inside of square brackets, and that number indicates the priority level that Revit will use when walls are connected. So in other words, how Revit is going to try to connect up the layers in the various wall types that are connected to each other. 1 is the highest priority, whereas 5 is the lowest priority. And membrane layers do not have a priority level. They typically have a 0 thickness, therefore you're not really concerned about how they're going to connect up. So for our brick exterior side of the wall here, we'll leave that set to finish 1. And then for layer number 2, this is our thermal air layer. And we have a 3-inch thick air gap here, so we'll leave that set as is. And for layer number 3, we can change that to a membrane layer. And we'll change it to an air infiltration barrier by clicking in the material field and clicking the More button. And then we can search for air infiltration. And once again, as you type, the list will be filtered. And then you can quickly select that material and click OK. And we'll change it to a 0 thickness. And then for layer number 4, we'll change the function to substrate. And we'll change it to a plywood sheathing. Once again, simply type here to quickly filter your list of materials. And then we'll change the thickness to 3/4 of an inch. And then we'll change the layer number 8. We'll change that to a membrane layer as well. And we'll change this material. Alright, so as you can see there, you can quickly adjust the function and the material as well as your thickness. And then we'll finish here our finish 2 for the interior side. We'll leave that set to gypsum wallboard there. Okay, a couple more things here. You can choose whether or not that layer is going to wrap. And then below the table here, you can control the default wrapping. And so as I zoom out here, you can see a preview. And so at inserts, you can set that to do not wrap or the exterior, interior, or both. And then as well as at ends. So for example, if I change that to exterior, you can see the preview update here and see how those are wrapping. I'll change that back to none. Additionally, you can always select a layer. You can add new layers. So if you insert a new layer, you can modify that as needed. You can delete a layer, and then you can move layers up or down. That way you can define the wall types to meet the needs of your project. So I'll click OK, and then click OK again, and we have now created a new wall type. Additionally, you can get even more complex than just simply adding layers, and you can also add sweeps and reveals. So I'll select this wall on the end and click Edit Type. And then once again, I'll click Edit next to Structure. And at the bottom, so you can see here the Modify Vertical Structure area. You can see that all these tools are unavailable. But when I change this view to the preview to a section view, now you can see all of these tools become available. When I click Sweeps, it opens up a Wall Sweeps dialog, and you can see here that sweeps have been added to this wall type. And there are various options that you have here to customize those sweeps. Similarly, I'll click Reveals, and that opens up the Reveals dialog, and you can add reveals as well. So you can add a profile, control the distance, the orientation, and various options there to get those placed exactly where you want it. Also, you can control these layers here, and you can move the top and bottom of the walls. You can move those up or down. You can also unlock certain layers so that you can move them independent of the rest of the wall. So for example, when I click Modify and then zoom in and select this side right here, you can see the outer boundary. There's now a padlock icon. And when I click that padlock to unlock it, it can now be moved independently. So I'll show you what I mean by that. When I click OK to close each of these dialogues, and then we open up the west elevation view here and zoom in on that wall. When I select that wall, you can see that there are now 2 shape handles, and I can use that outer one to control that layer independent of the other ones. So typically there's just one at the bottom of the wall, but when you unlock a layer, there becomes 2. And let me open up the Type Properties dialog and then the Edit Assembly dialog one more time, and I'll just make a couple more notes here. when you click Modify, that's when you can select a layer to unlock it. Be aware that you can only unlock layers that are right next to each other. If you try to unlock layers that are not right next to each other or adjacent, you'll get this error right here. So you can go ahead and click Close. And so if you needed to, let's say you wanted to adjust the exterior and the interior, what you could do is actually unlock some of these layers that are inside the wall. So instead of trying to unlock the exterior and the interior, you could do these internal layers here. So just a couple quick notes there to help you get the wall type defined exactly like you want it to.